Imagine standing in front of your company's executive board. You have, prepared for weeks, you know the data backward and forward, but the moment you open your mouth to speak, your mind just goes completely blank.
Oh, yeah. Every eye in the room locks onto you. It's a terrifying feeling.
Right. And if you were presenting in your native language, you could probably talk your way out of it. You'd instinctively use like filler words or maybe pivot to a familiar anecdote while your brain caught up. But in English, you are suddenly walking a high wire without a net.
Yeah, it is the absolute definition of a high-stakes professional scenario.
Exactly. Because unlike a private, one-on-one chat where you can quietly ask for a quick clarification or recover from a stumble with a laugh, a presentation is a one-shot performance. There are no private retries.
None at all. Think about the dynamics of that room. It is the highest visibility English situation you will ever face.
Yeah.
Every single word you say is being absorbed, analyzed, and judged by everyone simultaneously.
It's just massive pressure.
Right. And they aren't just judging your data. In real time, your credibility, both your professional expertise and your linguistic competence, is being ruthlessly assessed.
Okay, let's unpack this because that is exactly our mission today on this deep dive. Welcome, everyone. We are going to decode the exact, highly learnable phrases that transform a high-stakes presentation from a terrifying ordeal into a masterclass in authority.
Yes.
We're covering 12 specific linguistic techniques that touch every single stage of presenting. Because for non-native English speakers, the pressure here is incredibly unique. Presenting in a second language isn't just speaking, it's like trying to build an airplane while you are flying it.
That's a great way to put it.
You're trying to manage the complex aerodynamics of your professional content while simultaneously tightening the bolts of your English delivery. You have to project that fluency and structural authority.
Well, what's fascinating here is the incredibly good news I can share right up front is that the specific phrases that make you sound authoritative are completely learnable.
Wait, really? Just completely learnable?
Oh, absolutely. You don't have to be a naturally gifted orator. Experienced presenters across every industry, whether they are, pitching a tech startup in Silicon Valley or presenting clinical trials, they rely on the exact same formulas. It's almost like a hidden code.
And today we are giving you the entire code book. So let's start at the very beginning. Before you can walk that tightrope, you have to step onto it with absolute purpose.
Right.
The most crucial 30 seconds of your entire time on stage is your opening. And it is completely wild to me how many otherwise brilliant professionals just completely waste this moment.
Oh, they do. All the time.
They walk up to the front of the room, clear their throat, and do the whole logistics routine. Hi, everyone. Today I'm going to talk about X. I have 15 slides, and we'll have questions at the end.
Yeah, doing that is essentially giving your audience permission to check their emails. I mean, it's true. The first 30 seconds set the psychological expectation for everything that follows. That opening is where you create engagement before the audience makes the subconscious decision to either lean in or just mentally check out. Logistics simply do not capture human attention.
So instead of logistics, you need an opening hook. And there are 4 incredibly powerful ways to do this. The first is the question hook. You look directly at the room, pause, and say, how many of you have ever had this relevant experience? That's exactly what we're here to talk about today.
I love that one. It immediately forces the audience to reflect on their own lives.
Exactly. The second is the statistic hook. You drop a striking number or an unexpected fact and say, that's the challenge we're addressing today.
And then the third option, which is great, bypasses the analytical brain entirely and goes straight to human empathy. It's the story hook. You start with a narrative. Last quarter, something happened that changed how I think about this topic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, suddenly they aren't listening to a corporate briefing anymore. They are listening to a story.
Right. And finally, the fourth is the bold claim. By the end of this presentation, I'm going to change how you think about this topic, but I have to jump in right there.
Sure.
That bold claim. I hear what you're saying, but honestly, if I'm a non-native speaker and I'm already terrified of being up there, making a massive, bold claim right out of the gate feels like a huge risk. Does that actually work, or does it just make you look arrogant?
It's a completely natural fear. It feels incredibly risky internally because your adrenaline is just spiking.
Yeah.
But externally, it instantly establishes authority. It tells the audience, I know exactly where I am steering this ship, and you are in good hands.
Okay, I can see that.
And regardless of which of those 4 hooks you use, the question, the statistic, the story, or the bold claim, you must follow it immediately with the bridge phrase.
Right, technique number 2.
Exactly. The transition is, let me tell you why that matters and what we're going to cover today.
Which brings us directly to the map. Once you've hooked them, you cannot leave them hanging. You have to explicitly give them the structural layout. You say, I'm going to cover 3 things today. First X, then Y, and finally Z. By the end, you'll have this specific outcome.
This is rooted heavily in cognitive load theory.
Cognitive load.
Yeah. By giving them that structural map, you fundamentally reduce the mental effort required from your audience. Think about it from the perspective of an executive who has been in back-to-back meetings all day.
They're exhausted.
Exactly. People who know exactly where they're going pay far more attention to the journey. They don't have to spend precious mental energy trying to guess what your underlying point is.
So you've hooked them, you've laid out the map, but how do you smoothly move them from point A to point B without the whole thing feeling, I don't know, disjointed?
You need transitions.
Right. We are moving into what I like to call the connective tissue of the speech. Here's where it gets really interesting. These transition phrases are the mortar between the bricks. Without them, it's just a pile of facts.
That's a perfect analogy. How you move between sections dictates how the audience perceives your intelligence. Weak transitions make presentations feel disorganized.
Because the audience has to work too hard to figure out how slide 4 relates to slide 5.
Exactly. Strong transitions, on the other hand, create the feeling of a confident, highly structured mind at work.
Let's lay out the exact language for this connective tissue so you can really hear the rhythm of it. When you are moving forward to a new concept, you use phrases like, that brings me to my second point, or building on that.
Or, now let's turn to, and which leads me to.
Yeah. Then when you hit a moment where you need the audience to really wake up and pay attention because you are emphasizing something, you say, and this is the critical part.
I want to pause here because this is important, or the key takeaway from this.
Right. And you also have to consider visuals. A massive mistake non-native speakers make is the silent laser pointer phenomenon.
Oh, yes. They put up a complex graph and just point at it, assuming the audience understands it. You have to guide their eyes verbally.
Using phrases like, as you can see on this slide, or the data here shows.
What's interesting about this chart is, and I want to draw your attention to.
And finally, before moving on from a dense section, you summarize. So to summarize what we've covered so far, or the bottom line on this point is...
Those are essential.
Okay. Those phrases manage the audience's mind. But what about managing the mind of the person actually speaking? Technique 4. Let's talk about the physical reality of stage fright. There is an absolute cardinal rule here. Never, ever announce your nervousness.
Never.
Do not walk up to the microphone and say, sorry, I'm a bit nervous today. Doing that instantly focuses the entire room on your perceived weakness. Instead, the strategy is to channel that exact feeling into enthusiasm. You look at the audience and say, I'm really excited to share this with you today.
Or, this is something I feel strongly about, so I want to make sure I get it across clearly.
But wait, I have to push back hard on this. If my hands are visibly shaking and my voice is tight, telling the room I'm excited feels like I'm just gaslighting myself. Do you really just trick your own brain by calling your nerves excitement? Does the audience actually buy it?
You might think it's just a cheap mental trick, but it's actually rooted in hard biology. The physical energy of nervousness and the physical energy of enthusiasm are physiologically almost identical in your body.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Your heart beats faster, your cortisol spikes, you have a massive rush of adrenaline. The physical sensation is exactly the same. The language you choose determines which story the audience tells about that energy.
Oh, wow.
If you say you're nervous, they see fear. If you say you're excited, they see passion. Naming the emotion differently actually rewires how you in the room experience that exact same adrenaline rush.
That is genuinely fascinating. Speaking of managing perception, let's look at technique 5, simplifying complex information. This is crucial for non-native speakers who might worry they sound basic.
It is.
Using phrases to break down complexity involves language like, let me put that in simpler terms, or what that essentially means is.
Think of it this way, or the analogy I use for this is,
in plain terms, or to give you a concrete example.
It's important to understand why this works so beautifully in corporate environments. It signals what we call intellectual generosity.
Intellectual generosity. I like that.
You aren't just standing up there showing off how many big words you know. You are actively taking responsibility for making sure your audience understands the material. Taking a complex, dense topic and breaking it down plainly is a mark of elite communication, not a lack of complexity.
That totally reframes the whole act of explaining. But
Right.
what happens when things go off script? Technique 6, buying time. Unexpected moments happen. Someone asks a curveball question, or you just lose your train of thought.
The amateur instinct is to fill the silence with, or start panicking.
Right. Instead, you need professional time buyers. You say, that's a great question. Let me think about that for a moment. Or, I want to give that the consideration it deserves.
Let me come back to that in a second, or I'm going to write that down to make sure I address it properly. Notice the power dynamic in those phrases.
Yeah.
They communicate that you are taking the audience's questions seriously. You aren't scrambling, and you aren't defensive.
Hmm.
By explicitly saying you want to give it consideration, you are actually complimenting the person who asked it, while simultaneously buying your brain 5 precious seconds to formulate a response.
To really illustrate how transformative this connective tissue is in practice, there is an incredible real-world application of this involving a professional named David. Let me set the scene for you.
Okay.
David was a senior engineer. He had given dozens of high-level presentations in his native language. He was experienced, authoritative, and deeply respected. But when he had to present to global stakeholders in English, the entire vibe shifted.
I see this a lot.
He knew his content inside and out. He prepared the slides meticulously. But in the room, his English delivery felt incredibly mechanical. He would watch native English speakers present, and they flowed from one section to the next with this effortless ease that he just couldn't seem to replicate, no matter how much vocabulary he studied.
And the breakthrough he had was crucial. He realized that those native speakers weren't actually more knowledgeable about the engineering topic. Their data wasn't better. They were simply better at the transitions.
Exactly. They were using the load-bearing pillars. Phrases like, that brings me to my second point, and this is the critical part, or let me put that in simpler terms.
There.
So David completely changed his preparation strategy. He stopped agonizing over his technical content, which he already knew, and he practiced only the connective language. He rehearsed the transitions over and over, and his very next presentation, he felt entirely different from the inside. He felt controlled.
And the reception changed.
Completely. The feedback he got afterward was, that was a really engaging presentation. Think about that. His engineering content hadn't changed by a single decimal point. Only the language had.
Which naturally brings us to the ultimate gauntlet of any presentation, Technique 7, the absolute hardest part, the Q&A session.
Oh, yeah.
Handling difficult questions is where so many otherwise beautifully structured presentations completely fall apart, simply because a question is unexpected and the presenter doesn't have the defensive language ready to deploy.
This is where you need an exact blueprint. Let's walk through the 5 specific scenarios you will inevitably face. Scenario 1, you were asked a question and you simply just don't know the answer. Do not guess. You say, that's an excellent question, and I want to be honest, I don't have that data to hand. I'll find out and get back to you directly.
Perfect. Scenario 2, the question is completely outside your scope or irrelevant to the meeting. You politely pivot with, that's beyond the scope of what I'm covering today, but it's a good point and I'd be happy to discuss it afterward.
Scenario 3 is the one that causes the most anxiety. When the question is highly challenging, hostile, or critical of your work, you absolutely must maintain your composure. You say, I appreciate you raising that. It's something worth examining. My view is insert your response, though I acknowledge there are different perspectives on this.
And if you are confused and just need clarification, which is scenario 4, you confidently ask, could you help me understand exactly what you're asking? I want to make sure I address the right point.
And finally, scenario 5, when a question takes things on a tangent and you need to bridge it back to your core topic, that's related to something we covered earlier. The key point I'd connect it to is, but honestly, when I hear all these deflections and pivots, I have to ask,
Go ahead.
what does this all mean for our control? Are we essentially just surrendering control to the audience during the Q&A and hoping these phrases keep our head above water?
This raises an important question about boardroom dynamics. The reality is the exact opposite. You are not surrendering control. The beauty of having these set phrases hardwired into your brain is that they actually allow you to retain your authority, even when you genuinely don't have the answer.
Really?
Yes. By dictating the pace, acknowledging the validity of the question, and clearly setting the boundaries of what you will and won't discuss today, you are still the one driving the meeting. You remain the expert in the room.
Okay, so once you survive that Q&A gauntlet, you hit the finish line. Technique 8, the strong close. Whatever you do, please avoid the notoriously weak, deflating finish where you look down at your notes and mumble, and that's all I have. Any questions?
Oh, ending like that completely destroys the momentum you just spent 20 minutes carefully building.
Mm-hmm.
A strong close leaves the audience with something tangible.
Instead, you deploy one of these highly specific closing types. First is the summary close. So to summarize, we've covered X, Y, and Z. The core message I want you to leave with today is, and then you deliver a single, powerful summary sentence.
Second is the call to action close, which is great for pitches. The single most important thing I'd ask you to take from today is this specific action. That's where the real value lies.
You can also use the memorable line close. This circles back to your very first words. I started today with my opening hook. I hope what we've covered today changes this specific thing for you. Thank you.
And regardless of your chosen close, you should always use professional end signals to stick the landing gracefully. Phrases like, "and on that note," or "I'll leave you with this thought," or "before I open for questions."
Okay, so now that the core presentation and the Q&A are structurally bulletproof, we move into the micro adjustments. These are the final polishes that separate a merely good presenter from a phenomenal one. Let's hit the final four techniques, 9 through 12.
Let's do it.
The first is recovery. Look, you are going to make mistakes. You'll say the wrong number or skip a slide, but you should never over-apologize. Don't say, "I'm so sorry, my English is bad, excuse me." Acknowledge the error, correct it, and seamlessly move on. Let me rephrase that, or what I meant to say was,
Or actually, let me correct that. The accurate figure is.
Technique 10 is pacing. You want to continually ensure you are bringing the room with you. You use checking phrases like, "I want to make sure everyone is following. Shall I slow down at any point?"
This next part moves quickly. Let me know if I lose anyone.
Technique 11 is engagement, making it feel like a dialogue. Does this match what you're seeing in your own experience? Or I'd be curious to hear what you think about this.
How many of you have encountered this situation?
And lastly, technique 12, confidence signals. This is language that subtly reinforces your authority without sounding arrogant. I'm confident that, or the data is clear on this.
Based on this evidence, I believe, or there's strong support for the view that...
To see all of this coming together in perfect harmony under extreme pressure, I want to tell you about Sophia.
Oh, this is a great story.
Sophia was a regional manager presenting to her global leadership team for the very first time. Her promotion essentially depended on this hour. She walked to the front of the boardroom, but she didn't open with logistics. She looked at the executives and opened with a hook. How many of you have lost a client because of a communication breakdown?
Brilliant.
Half the hands around the table went up. Then she immediately used her bridge. That's exactly what we're here to address today.
She had their complete attention from second one. And as she moved through her arguments, she utilized clear, deliberate transitions. That brings me to my second point.
Yeah.
That this is the critical part.
Right. When the financial data got incredibly dense, she didn't panic. She used the simplification technique. Let me put this in simpler terms. And she actually watched the posture of the executives physically relax.
Because she was doing the mental heavy lifting for them.
Exactly. And then came the Q&A. One of the senior directors actually pushed back aggressively on her revenue projections. It is a nightmare scenario for many non-native speakers, right? Being challenged on the fly by a boss. But she didn't flinch. She used her conversational armor flawlessly. She looked right back at him and said, "I appreciate you raising that. It's worth examining. The data I'm citing is from our Q3 internal audit. I'd welcome discussing the methodology afterward if that would be useful."
Masterful.
Mm-hmm.
She shut down the hostility while remaining completely respectful.
And she closed strongly with a single sentence. The change we're proposing isn't about technology, it's about how we talk to our clients. Afterwards, that exact same director found her in the hallway and asked, "Where did you learn to present like that?" And she just smiled and said, "I've been working on it."
Sophia's story perfectly synthesizes the ultimate takeaway here. I mean, your technical knowledge, your data, your content, that is your expertise. But the language you use is your delivery system.
Yeah.
When both of those elements work together seamlessly with the right hooks, the smooth transitions, and the commanding closes, a presentation completely stops being something an audience merely endures. It becomes something they actually remember and respect.
The delivery system is just as crucial as the cargo. I love that. All right, make sure you subscribe to Fluent Daily because our next deep dive is going to be incredibly valuable. We are going to cover how to sound confident in English even when you're not.
That's going to be a good one.
Yeah, we will be exploring the specific language patterns that signal unshakable confidence regardless of how terrified you might feel on the inside. But before we wrap up today, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Okay.
I want you to think back to the absolute last genuinely terrible presentation you sat through. The kind that had you checking your watch after 5 agonizing minutes. Think about it critically. Was the underlying data actually bad? Or was the presentation entirely lacking this connective mortar, this linguistic architecture we talked about today?
It's usually the mortar.
I challenge you to actively listen for these transition phrases in the very next meeting you attend. Because once you hear the difference between someone stumbling on a high wire without a net and someone delivering a masterfully controlled performance, you can't unhear it. See you there.